The night sky was quiet, but then it broke with a streak of silver fire. People in a small town looked up, pointing at the sudden flash, thinking it was just a falling star. But far beyond their imagination, it was not a star at all. It was a ship, small and fragile, lost between worlds, carrying a passenger who did not belong here. Inside the craft, a young girl held on tightly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She was not human, though at first glance she might look like one. Her hair shimmered faintly under the dim light, and her skin carried a soft glow. She had been searching for a place to start again, a place where dreams were promised. She had heard whispers of Earth, a world where freedom was real and dreams were endless. She believed in the stories of the American dream, a land where anyone, even someone like her, could rise and make a life worth living. Her ship crashed in the forest outside the town. Hidden by the trees, no one saw her climb out. Trembling, afraid, but also curious, she looked at the world around her, the cold air, the strange smell of gasoline from a road nearby, the flickering neon lights in the distance. For the first time in her life, she was standing on Earth. The girl walked toward the town, her bare feet silent on the ground. She had studied human language from far away, listening to signals in space. Now she whispered the words to herself, repeating them, trying to sound human. When she reached the streets, she saw bright lights, cars rushing by, people laughing and talking. It was noisy, messy, alive, and she loved it. This was the dream she had heard about, a place where life felt full and strong. But as she moved deeper into the town, she began to notice the shadows. Behind the shining glass windows filled with goods, she saw faces tired and hopeless. A man sitting on the sidewalk held a cardboard sign asking for food. Children walked quickly, their clothes thin against the cold. Their eyes empty. She did not understand, because the dream she imagined did not look like this. Why would some live in light and others in such darkness? The promise of Earth was not as simple as she thought. The girl found an empty bench and sat quietly watching. Her heart beat faster with both wonder and doubt. She wanted to believe, but deep inside she felt something was wrong. She remembered the stars she left behind, the warnings from her people. They told her that dreams always had a price, and sometimes the price was hidden, but she had not listened, because she wanted to see for herself. Hours passed and she stayed silent, watching the world move. She saw a young woman rushing from work, her uniform stained with sweat, her face pale with exhaustion. She saw men arguing loudly outside a bar, their laughter masking anger. She saw a family huddled together, whispering about bills they could not pay. Everywhere she looked, she found two sides of the same coin, one side glowing with wealth and laughter, the other sinking in pain and fear. A sudden sound broke her thoughts. A police car roared past with sirens screaming, red and blue lights cutting the night. The alien girl froze, her instincts sharp. For a moment, she thought they had come for her. But then she saw them stop at a corner, pulling a young boy into the car. He was shouting that he had done nothing wrong, but no one listened. The crowd that gathered simply watched, then walked away. The girl trembled, her heart heavy. Was this really the land of freedom she had believed in? She wanted to leave, but her ship was broken. Hidden far in the woods, there was no way back to the stars, no escape. This world was now her world, whether she liked it or not. Her journey was not about escaping anymore. It was about surviving, learning, and maybe changing what she saw. She pulled the hood of her jacket tighter. Trying to look more human, she whispered to herself, repeating the words she had learned. I am free, I am safe. I am like them. But even as she spoke, her glowing eyes betrayed the truth. She was different, and the world would soon notice. The night grew colder, the streets emptier. The alien girl stood up and began walking again. Each step carried her deeper into the unknown. She wanted to believe in the American dream, but she had already seen its cracks. She did not know it yet. But her arrival would change everything, for her, and for the humans who would one day learn her secret. And as the moonlight fell on her glowing face, a question hung in the air like a whisper. What is the true cost of the American dream? The alien girl woke the next morning to the sound of footsteps. She had fallen asleep on a bench in the corner of the park, hiding her face under her hood. When she opened her eyes, she saw people rushing by, carrying bags, drinking coffee, talking into small glowing devices. Everyone looked busy. Everyone looked tired. Yet they all kept moving, as if something invisible was pushing them forward. She stood up, stretching her arms, feeling the weight of this strange new world. Her ship was gone, buried in the forest, and she had no way to return to the stars. The only path now was forward, to live among the humans and chase the dream they seemed to worship. She told herself, if the American dream was real, then she would find it, she would claim it. She had crossed galaxies for this, and she would not give up so easily. Her first challenge was survival. She had no money, no family, and no name that humans could accept. But she was clever, her alien mind sharp and quick. She watched people carefully, listening to their words, copying their movements. She learned which smiles were real and which were fake, which voices carried kindness and which carried cruelty. That afternoon, she walked into a small diner on the edge of town. The smell of frying food made her stomach twist with hunger. She sat quietly, pretending she belonged, until a kind old woman behind the counter noticed her. "Do you need something to eat, sweetheart?" the woman asked, her voice soft but tired. The girl nodded, whispering yes, and for the first time, she was given a warm plate of food. She ate quickly but carefully, afraid someone would see her secret. When she finished, the woman smiled and asked, "Do you need work?" The girl froze but then slowly nodded again. This was it, her first chance to step inside the dream. From that day, she began working in the diner, washing dishes, cleaning tables, running errands. The work was hard. The pay was small, but she was grateful. Every coin she earned felt like a step closer to belonging. The humans around her spoke of success, of buying houses, of cars, of freedom. She listened to their stories and believed if they could reach the dream, maybe she could too. But even as she worked, she noticed things that did not fit. The old woman never smiled with her eyes, only with her lips. The workers whispered about bills they could not pay. The cook coughed from smoke and grease, but he never stopped, because stopping meant losing his job. The alien girl tried to ignore these things, telling herself it was only part of the journey. The dream was waiting, she only had to work harder. Weeks passed, and the girl learned more. She walked through the city, seeing both shining towers and crumbling streets. She saw people dressed in expensive clothes stepping out of black cars. She also saw men sleeping under bridges with no blanket to cover them. She felt confused, but she still believed. Maybe those who suffered simply had not reached the dream yet. Maybe their chance was still coming. One night, as she left the diner, she met a man playing music on the sidewalk. His guitar was old, his clothes torn, but his voice carried a strange beauty. She stopped to listen, her eyes wide. When he finished, she asked softly, "Why do you sing here?" The man smiled sadly. "Because dreams are expensive, and this is all I can afford." His words stayed with her long after she walked away. The dream she wanted so badly was beginning to show its price. At the diner, she worked harder. She never complained, never slowed down. The other workers admired her energy, calling her the strange, quiet girl. No one knew her secret. Not yet, but her glowing eyes sometimes betrayed her at night. When she stared into the mirror of the bathroom, she would whisper to herself, "I am human, I am like them. I can do this," but a small voice inside asked, "Can you really?" One evening after closing time, she overheard the old woman speaking to the cook. They thought she was gone, but she listened from the shadows. "Business is bad," the woman whispered. "We cannot keep this place much longer," the cook sighed. "We work, we bleed, and still it's never enough." The alien girl felt her chest tighten. If even those who had worked their whole lives could lose everything, then what was the promise worth? She walked home under the dark sky, her mind racing. She wanted to believe in the American dream, but each day it seemed harder. She had tasted kindness, but she had also tasted despair. The dream was shining, but its shine was beginning to look like a mask, and behind the mask she feared there was only emptiness. As she reached her small room above the diner, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will be better." But in her heart, she wondered if tomorrow would only bring the same struggle, the same hunger, the same endless chase. The promise of Earth was strong, but promises could break, and she did not yet know how much it would cost her to keep chasing. The alien girl thought she was starting to understand life on Earth. She had a place to stay, a job at the diner, and coins in her pocket. For a while, it felt like she was becoming part of the dream she had heard about. But soon she discovered that beneath every smile, every shining light, there was a hidden shadow. One evening, after work, the kind old woman who ran the diner offered her a bed in her home. "You should not sleep in the back room anymore," the woman said softly. "Come stay with us." The girl hesitated, afraid her secret might be discovered, but she finally agreed. That night, she followed the woman to a small house on the edge of town. It was not large or beautiful, but it was warm, filled with voices and the smell of food. For the first time since she had landed on Earth, she felt the comfort of a family. The woman's husband greeted her with a tired smile, his hands rough from years of hard work. 2 children peeked at her from behind a doorway, shy but curious. They reminded her of the young back on her homeworld, full of questions, full of dreams. The girl stayed with them, learning their ways, helping with chores, listening to their stories. She saw how much they loved one another, but she also saw something darker behind their eyes. At night, when the children slept, the parents whispered in the kitchen. The alien girl with her sharp hearing could not help but listen. The father spoke of unpaid bills, of loans piling up, of medicine they could not afford. The mother tried to be hopeful, but her voice often broke with worry. They worked every day, yet it was never enough. The girl realized the American dream was not only about hope, it was also about struggle. She helped where she could, giving part of her small pay to the family. They thanked her, believing she was simply a lost girl with no past, but inside, she wondered if she had only added another burden. The children asked her what she dreamed of, and she told them simply, "A better tomorrow." Her words made them smile, but she saw their eyes cloud when they looked at their parents. They already knew how heavy tomorrow could be. The girl walked through the city often, trying to understand. She saw workers leaving factories with bent backs and weary faces. She saw mothers carrying groceries on credit, hoping their money would last until the next pay. She saw young men shouting about opportunity on corners, selling promises they did not believe themselves. Everywhere she turned, she saw the same struggle. Hidden under the mask of the dream, one night, the girl stayed awake long after the family had gone to bed. She sat by the window, staring at the lights of the city in the distance. Her glowing eyes reflected the neon signs that shouted success, freedom, happiness. But behind those words, she saw the truth. The signs were not for the poor, not for the broken, not for the tired. They were for those who could already pay the price. She thought of her people back in the stars, how they had once built systems that used the weak as fuel, and she felt a chill, because Earth looked no different. The next day at the diner, she overheard a group of businessmen at a table. They laughed loudly, speaking of profits and growth. While their servers' hands trembled from exhaustion, one man said, "Hard work always pays off. That is the American way." But the alien girl watched the server's pale face and wondered, if hard work always paid off, why did she see so many falling deeper into despair? That evening, when she returned home, she found the father sitting alone on the porch. His shoulders sagged, his eyes empty. He looked at her and asked quietly, "Do you believe in dreams?" She wanted to answer yes, but her throat closed. Instead, she asked, "Do you?" The man gave a bitter smile. "I used to, but dreams cost too much." Her heart ached, for she could see his strength fading, his hope slipping away. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she was not human, that she had come to Earth chasing the very same dream. But she stayed silent, afraid her words would only bring fear. Instead, she promised herself she would help this family, even if it meant revealing who she truly was. Later that night, as she lay awake, she heard another whisper from the kitchen, the mother's voice sharp with fear. "If we cannot pay next month, they will take the house." The girl closed her eyes, her heart pounding. She now understood that the dream was not free. It came with chains that wrapped around every family, pulling them down. She had thought she was stepping into a land of promise, but she had stepped into a web of struggle, and she was caught in it now, just like them. As the moonlight fell across the room, the alien girl made a silent vow. She would not let this family fall. She did not know how, or what price she would have to pay, but she could not turn away. She had chased the dream, but now she was beginning to see the true cost, and somewhere in the shadows, she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her, as if someone already knew her secret. The alien girl had grown used to the rhythm of human life. Days spent working at the diner, nights spent with the family who had taken her in. She had learned to smile when others smiled, to nod when they spoke of dreams, to hide the glow in her eyes under the shadow of her hood. But inside her heart she was restless. The dream she had chased across the stars was changing shape. It looked bright on the surface, but every day she saw cracks spreading wider. One evening, she walked through the city alone. The streets buzzed with neon lights and voices, the air heavy with smoke and gasoline. She turned a corner and found herself in an alley, where a group of men huddled around a small fire. They were silent, their faces pale with hunger, their hands shaking from cold. None of them looked at the tall towers above. None of them spoke of hope. The girl felt her stomach twist. This was not the dream she had been promised. This was a nightmare hiding in plain sight. As she moved deeper into the city, her alien senses picked up something strange. In the tall glass buildings, behind locked doors, she felt waves of energy. It was not just electricity, it was something else, something familiar. Her people once used the same energy to power their machines. It was the energy of living beings, the invisible force drawn from human exhaustion, human pain. She froze in the street, her glowing eyes widening. Was this the true engine of the American dream? The next day she returned to the diner, her mind heavy with questions. She tried to focus on her work, but every time she looked at the old woman, at the weary cook, at the tired customers, she saw the same truth. Their strength was being drained, piece by piece, yet they kept going. They had no choice. The system demanded their labor, their hours, their very lives, and in return, it gave them only enough to keep chasing, never enough to truly catch the dream. That night, the girl followed her instincts. She walked past the edge of town, toward the glowing towers of the city. Her senses guided her to a building taller than all the rest, its walls shining like glass, its roof lost in the sky. She slipped inside through the shadows, moving silently like she had done on alien worlds. The air inside was cold and sharp, filled with the hum of machines. She climbed higher and higher until she found a hidden floor. There, behind steel doors, she saw the truth with her own eyes. Rows of humans sat in chairs, their heads lowered, wires glowing faintly around them. They were not prisoners, yet they were trapped, their energy pulled away by unseen hands. Screens above them showed endless numbers rising and falling. Profits, markets, wealth. The girl gasped, her chest tight. This was not just work, this was harvesting. Corporations were not simply businesses. They were engines feeding on human struggle. She had seen this before, long ago in the history of her own people. They too had once built machines that fed on the weak, until it almost destroyed them. She thought they had left such cruelty behind. But here it was again, alive on Earth. A voice echoed behind her. You should not be here. She spun around, her glowing eyes bright with fear. A tall man in a black suit stepped from the shadows, his smile cold, his gaze sharp. You are not like them, he said softly. I can see it in your eyes. Her heart pounded. For the first time she realized she was not hidden. Someone knew her secret. The man walked closer, his steps slow, deliberate. You came here for the dream, didn't you? He asked. Everyone comes for it, but few understand the cost. She stayed silent. Her hands shaking, he leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. Stay silent, do your work, keep your head down, and you might survive. His words struck her like a blade. He knew what she had seen, and he was warning her to forget it. The girl fled, running through the empty halls, her heart racing. She returned to the small house at the edge of town, but she could not sleep. The image of the drained humans, the glowing wires, the numbers on the screens burned in her mind. She thought of the family who had given her shelter, of the father who worked 2 jobs, of the mother who whispered of bills they could not pay. She thought of the children, dreaming of a tomorrow that might never come. And she realized the terrible truth. They were all trapped in the same machine. Their struggles were not accidents, they were part of the design. She stared out the window at the city lights, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow and anger. She had wanted to believe in the dream, but now she had seen its engine. The dream was not built on freedom, it was built on sacrifice. And the cost was always paid by those who had the least to give. The night was silent, but in her chest a storm was growing. She knew she could not stay silent forever. The dream was a lie and someone had to reveal it. But she also knew that the man in the black suit was right. If she spoke, they would come for her. Her choice was no longer simple survival. Her choice was between silence and truth, between safety and sacrifice, and somewhere deep inside, she already knew which path she would take. The alien girl could no longer walk the streets without fear. Since the night she discovered the hidden floor in the shining tower, she felt eyes on her everywhere, every corner, every crowded bus. Every alley seemed to hold a shadow that watched her too closely. The man in the black suit had warned her, but his warning felt more like a threat. She knew now that the dream she had chased was guarded, protected by people who would not let its secret be exposed. At the diner, she pretended everything was normal. She cleaned tables, carried plates, and smiled politely at customers. But her hands shook when she poured coffee. Her heart raced when the bell over the door rang. She began to notice strange men sitting in the diner at odd hours, always silent, always watching. Their suits were clean, their eyes cold. The old woman whispered that they were government workers. But the girl knew better. They were hunters, and she was their prey. One evening after closing, the cook handed her a bag of food to take home. "Eat well," he said, his voice warm but tired. "You look thinner every day." She forced a smile. But inside she knew it was not hunger that made her weak. It was fear. As she walked back to the small house, she heard footsteps behind her, steady and heavy. She turned a corner quickly, her breath fast when she looked back. No one was there, but she could feel them. The hunters were close. That night she dreamed of her home among the stars. She saw her people warning her, their voices echoing. Dreams always have a price. She woke with a start, the sound of glass shattering downstairs. Her heart jumped. Someone had broken into the house. The father rushed to the living room, shouting, while the mother pulled the children close. The alien girl moved silently, her glowing eyes bright in the dark. She saw shadows moving outside the window. Figures surrounding the house. They had come for her, and now the family who had given her shelter was in danger. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Stay back," she told the father. "This is for me." He looked at her with confusion, but before he could answer, the door burst open. Men in black suits stormed inside, their voices commanding, their hands reaching. The children screamed, the mother cried, the alien girl's fear turned into fire. For the first time since landing on Earth, she let her powers break free. Her hands glowed with energy, a soft but powerful light. The air cracked as she raised her arms. Sending a wave across the room, the men staggered back, their weapons flying from their hands. The family gasped, staring at her in shock. They saw her for what she truly was, not a lost human girl, but something more, something alien. The hunters recovered quickly, stepping forward again. "Stop resisting," one shouted. "You belong to us now." But she shook her head, her voice steady. "I belong to no one." She blasted the floor with light. The ground shaking, the family clung to each other as the house trembled. The men retreated, regrouping outside, but she knew they would return. They would never stop. She turned to the family, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow. "I must leave," she said softly. "If I stay, you will suffer." The mother shook her head, tears streaming. "But where will you go?" The girl looked toward the dark city. "I do not know," she whispered, "but I cannot let them hurt you because of me." She stepped into the night, her hood pulled low, her heart heavy. Every street she walked, every corner she turned, she felt the hunters behind her. They were patient, they were many. She moved quickly, but their presence pressed closer. The city no longer felt alive, it felt like a cage closing in. She ducked into alleys, climbed fire escapes, hid in the shadows of tall buildings. Her glowing eyes lit the darkness as she searched for escape. But no matter where she went, the hunters followed. They knew she had seen too much, and they would not rest until she was silenced. Hours passed, and she grew tired, her strength fading. At last, she reached the edge of the river, the cold water shining under the moonlight. She stood on the bank, listening to the footsteps behind her. The hunters were near, their voices sharp, their flashlights cutting the dark. She had nowhere left to run. Her heart pounded, but she lifted her head, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. She whispered to herself, "I came here for a dream, but now I must fight for truth." The men stepped from the shadows, circling her slowly. One raised a device, strange and humming, aimed at her chest. "Come quietly," he ordered, "or we will take you by force." The girl spread her arms, the air around her crackling with energy. She would not surrender, not now, not after everything she had seen. If they wanted to chase her, they would learn what it meant to hunt someone who had crossed the stars. The alien girl stood at the riverbank, her eyes glowing like two small moons. The hunters surrounded her, their flashlights cutting through the mist, their voices sharp and cold. They told her to surrender, to give herself up. But she only lifted her chin higher. She had not crossed galaxies to bow her head to chains. She had come searching for the American dream, And instead she had found its shadow. Now that shadow wanted to consume her. Energy flowed through her hands, bright and fierce. When the hunters moved closer, she released it. A wave of light that cracked the air like thunder. The men staggered back, shields rising, their devices humming with power. They were ready for her. They knew what she was. The fight was not fair, but she had no choice. She leapt into the water, the cold wrapping around her. Bullets and beams cut the night behind her, but the river carried her away. She disappeared into the darkness hours later. She crawled onto the muddy bank far from the city. Her body was weak, her breath heavy, her powers fading. She lay still, staring at the sky, wishing for her lost ship, wishing for the stars, but she knew she could not return. Earth was her prison now, and the hunters would never stop. When dawn came, she walked back toward the small town, her clothes torn, her face pale. The family she had left behind was waiting, their eyes full of fear and questions. The children ran to her, holding her hands tightly. "You came back," the little girl whispered. The alien girl smiled faintly. Though her heart was heavy, she wanted to stay. But she could see the truth in the parents' eyes. Her presence had already brought danger, and danger always demanded a price. That evening, the news spread quickly. Strange lights in the sky, whispers of a creature not human. The media showed blurry images, calling her a monster, calling her a threat. People argued in the streets, some shouting that she should be captured, others whispering she might be a sign of hope. The dream she had wanted so badly was slipping further away. Now she was not a girl chasing the dream. She was the enemy of it. The family begged her to hide, to stay safe, but the girl shook her head. "Hiding will only bring more pain," she said softly. "They will never stop hunting me, and you will suffer because of me." The father clenched his fists. "You saved us," he said. "You do not owe us anything." But she looked at him with sorrow in her glowing eyes. "I owe you everything because you gave me a home." For days she stayed hidden, moving at night, watching from the shadows. She saw the city change, fear grew stronger. Men in black suits filled the streets. Posters warning of her face appeared on walls. The American dream now used her as an example. "Be afraid of what is different," the voices on the screen shouted. The people listened because fear was easier than truth. The children cried when she left the house for the last time. "Please don't go," they begged. "Stay with us." Her heart broke, but she touched their faces gently. "You must dream for yourselves," she whispered. "Do not let them take that from you." She turned away, tears burning her eyes. For the first time, she truly understood the cost of chasing dreams. It was not only her safety, it was the safety of everyone she loved. One night, she climbed to the roof of an abandoned building, staring at the glowing towers of the city. The machines inside those towers still drained the lives of countless humans. The hunters still walked freely, pretending to serve justice, and the dream was still sold like a shining prize that could never be reached. She clenched her fists, her body trembling. If she stayed silent, nothing would change. If she spoke, she would be destroyed either way. There was a price to pay. She whispered to herself, "If truth has a cost, then I must pay it." Her glowing eyes brightened, stronger than they had ever been. She thought of her people, who had once destroyed their own chains. She thought of the family who had shown her kindness. Even when they had nothing, she thought of the children, who still believed tomorrow could be better. And she made her choice the next morning. She stepped into the city, her hood pulled back, her face uncovered. People stopped and stared, whispers turning into shouts. The hunters appeared quickly, their weapons ready, their voices harsh. But before they could strike, she lifted her arms. Her voice carried through the air, clear and strong. "You chase a dream that steals from you, a dream that drains you, a dream that was never meant to be free." The crowd froze. The hunters moved closer. But her words had already cut through the silence. She knew she would not escape this time. She knew the price was her freedom, maybe even her life. But she also knew that sometimes a single spark could set fire to the dark, and she was ready to burn. The city was alive with fear the moment the alien girl stepped into the open. People gathered in the streets, their voices rising, some shouting in anger, others whispering in awe. The hunters closed in quickly, their weapons glowing, their faces cold and certain. But the girl did not run. She stood tall, her glowing eyes fixed on the crowd. For the first time, she was no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be human. She was ready to show the truth, even if it meant losing everything. Her voice rose above the chaos. You chase a dream that steals from you, she cried. You work until your bodies break. You struggle until your hearts give out. And still they tell you it is not enough. The people fell silent, their eyes locked on her. Some shook their heads in denial, but others listened, their faces heavy with the weight of her words. The hunters shouted for her to stop, their weapons aimed at her chest, but she raised her hands, not in surrender but in defiance. They promise freedom, but they take it from you, she continued, her voice shaking the air. They promise wealth, but they build it from your suffering. You are told to dream, but your dreams are used against you. The crowd began to stir, murmurs spreading like fire. A woman in the front whispered, "She is right." A man behind her shouted, "Lies." The city was split, fear against hope, silence against truth, and the alien girl stood in the center of it all, the storm around her growing louder. The hunters moved closer, their leader stepping forward. "This creature is dangerous," he declared. "She threatens your way of life." But the girl shook her head, her eyes burning. "No, I do not threaten you," she said. "I threaten those who feed on you." Her words echoed, and the crowd gasped. For the first time, the truth was spoken aloud. The hunters raised their weapons, beams of light ready to strike. The girl closed her eyes, bracing for the end. She whispered to herself, "If this is the price, I will pay it." But before they could fire, the crowd surged forward. People shouted, "Stop! Leave her! She speaks the truth!" The hunters hesitated, their grip faltering. The girl opened her eyes and saw it, something she had not seen since arriving on Earth: unity. The people were no longer silent, no longer blind. They were beginning to see. But the price was not yet paid. The hunters would not allow rebellion. They raised their weapons again, and this time they fired. The beam struck her body. Searing with pain, she staggered, her knees trembling, but she did not fall. Her glowing eyes blazed brighter, brighter than the city lights with the last of her strength. She lifted her arms and released a wave of pure energy. The ground shook, windows shattered. The hunters were thrown back into the streets, and then she collapsed. The crowd rushed forward, voices crying out. Some lifted her broken body, others shielded her from the hunters trying to rise again. The people formed a wall around her, their voices louder than the sirens. "No more lies," they shouted. "No more chains." The city that had once ignored its shadows now stood in them together. The alien girl lay in their arms, her breath shallow, her eyes dim. She smiled faintly, whispering, "Now you see." Her voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. Then her eyes closed, her glow fading into the night. Silence fell, heavy and endless. No one knew if she had died or if she had only gone to rest, but her words remained, carried on every tongue, whispered in every home. The American dream was no longer a promise without question. It was now a story with a cost everyone had seen. Weeks passed and her image spread. Some called her a savior, others called her a threat. But in quiet corners, in dark rooms, families whispered her name. They spoke of the girl from the stars who had shown them the truth. Children drew her glowing eyes in chalk on the streets. Workers spoke of her when they toiled long hours. Her memory became a spark that would not die. The hunters denied her. The towers erased her from their screens. But the people remembered, and memory was more powerful than fear. In the end, no one knew where she had gone. Some believed she had died that night, her light given to the people she had tried to save. Others believed she had risen back to the stars, waiting and watching for the day they would finally break their chains. But all agreed on one thing: she had shown them the true cost of the dream they had been chasing. And though her body was gone, her story remained a warning, a legend, a promise of something greater. Not the American dream sold in neon lights, but a dream of freedom, real and alive. The alien girl had paid the price, and because of her, the people had begun to wake.